There are several different ways of going about animating a flag rolling up. The first that come to mind for me would probably be just using a bone chain and animating the bone chain. But I thought that it might be nice to take a look at using dynamics to do this. So let's do that. I'm going to go ahead and make a flag, and we're just going to go with the real basic flag. I'll start with a disk and just make a long little pole here. So that's our pole, and we can go ahead and surface it. I don't really have to select everything. Remember that if nothing is selected, LightWave assumes everything is selected. So I'll go ahead and leave that deselected and hit Q for change surface. I like to remember it as Q for quality surfaces, just as an excuse to remember why it's Q for the shortcut key. For name, let's just call this pole, and I'm just going to give it a basic color. We'll pick that blue. Okay, and then now let's make the flag portion of it. I'm going to hit Shift K for the knife tool. I'm just going to slice right here. We'll have the flag come out of the pole. Actually, I'm going to move that down a little bit so we can have a taller flag. I'll zoom in, and I'm going to switch to edge mode, and I'm just going to select this edge right here. But I don't want the part down here, so I'll deselect that. I only have one edge selected, which is what I want. And then I'm going to hit E for extender plus, T for move, and I'm going to pull out the flag. Say something like that. Okay. I don't really see it over in my perspective window because it's a single-sided poly. Let's go ahead and not only make that double-sided, but let's go ahead and give it a different surface color. So I'm going to go Q for change surface, flag, and we'll give it a different color. I'll give it this yellow color, and we'll go over to the surface editor right here, and we'll just make it double-sided. Okay, that's about all the surfacing we're really going to do. This is more about the animation using dynamics. So one last thing that I want to do, knowing that I'm going to be using dynamics, it's a good idea to be able to select certain portions of your geometry based off of vertex maps, and I can use the surface names and that'll come in handy. But what I'll do is I'll switch to weight shade, and I'm just going to select the points here. Actually, I just realized before I even do that, our flag's not going to really do much if it's just one big flat polygon. So I'm going to go ahead and let's subdivide that. So I'm going to hit Shift D to bring up subdivide polygons, and I'm going to do that a few times. And then I'll go ahead and triple it as well, just because we'll get better deformation that way. Okay, now I'm ready to add a weight map. I got ahead of myself there. I'm going to go ahead and select these points, and where it says W down here, that stands for weight map. I'm going to select new, and for the name, usually when it comes to dynamics, I don't get too creative. I call it fix because usually you're going to end up fixing the points into place. So if that's what you're going to use it for, it's easy to find if you just call it fix. Hit create, and you can see, let me go zoom in here, you can see that the pole and the flag have 100% weight map value, with the weight map value at 100% for fix is the name of this weight map. Okay, so I think we're pretty much ready to go. I'll go ahead and go back to texture mode. This is our flag. We should be ready to go to send it into layout. So let's go ahead and save it, and I'm just going to call this flag pole, and I like using version numbers, so I'm going to do 001 just in case if I ever want to update it and keep a copy of this one. So let's send that over to layout, and here we are in layout ready to get set up. So I thought, again, could use bones, but let's use dynamics. I thought we'd take a look at doing it with both soft effects and cloth effects, just so that we can get an idea of working with both of those. Let's start off with soft effects, because I rarely do I see too much documentation or tutorials for soft effects, so let's dive in there. I'm going to go ahead and add a wind emitter. So I'm going to go to Items, Dynamic Object, Wind, and since we're only going to have one, I'll go ahead and leave the name Wind. And let's use, for the wind mode, we'll keep it as direction. Blend mode add, we'll keep with that. Size effect wind. For fall off mode, I want it so that no matter where I put this, it just doesn't matter. I'm going to set that to off. And for power, let's crank that up. 300. We can go back and adjust this if we don't like the way it looks. And right now, the direction is pointing straight up. Let's go ahead and close this. I'm going to hit Y for rotate, and I'm just going to rotate it so that it's facing towards or down the X. Okay. It doesn't matter where I place it because I turned off the fall off, but I'm just going to kick it off to the side here, which should make it a little easier to see what's going on. And if I were to try and calculate right now, nothing would happen because this isn't a dynamic object yet. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. Don't worry, our wind hasn't gone away. This blue line represents it. If I select the wind, we'll see the representation here again. I'm going to go back to the flag. I'm going to hit P for properties. And under the dynamics tab, I'm going to add soft effects. Double click. Under the input, I'll leave all of this default. Under the operator, I'm going to go ahead and take this map off. I'm going to set it to none. That way I don't get an initial, like it's not going to automatically start waving around. I'm going to jump over to the deform tab, and I'm going to skip down here to keep root. I want to keep the original size. We're going to use that weight map that we created, the fixed weight map. And you can see over here, those points are selected in red. It lets me know that for this option right here, these are the points that are selected. I want it to follow the wind, and we've got the wind in the scene. And I'm going to go ahead and fix by event. I need to set up an event, but let me go ahead and select this. And what this will do is any points that enter in a collision object that is set to event are going to get locked into place, and that's going to help us roll this flag up. So I'm going to go ahead and click that while I'm in here, and I can go ahead and close this down. So before I calculate, I'm going to go ahead, I'm repositioning my window so that we can see what's going on. I'm going to go ahead and add a collision object. And because I'm only going to use one, we'll go ahead and keep this with the name of collision. I'm usually pretty good about renaming these things so that when my scene gets bigger, I know exactly what is going on, and I don't have 3 collision objects named collision 1, 2, 3. But for right now, let's go ahead and keep that. So I hit OK. Instead of a sphere, I'm going to change that to a box. We'll keep the size, but the mode will change to event. Go ahead and close that down. I'm going to move this into place. T for move. I'm going to move it so that the first kind of row of points on the flag are already within the event. Okay, so that they'll be fixed right away when I start to calculate. And then what I want is, well, I'm going to go ahead and calculate just so we can see what's going on. If I calculate, the flag kind of shifted a little bit because it starts to get pulled by the wind, but I don't really have any motion going on. So what I want is I'm going to spin this flagpole around, and I want the points to get fixed, locked into place as it spins, which should give us a look of the flag being rolled up. So I'm going to come over to frame 10 for my flag, and I'm going to set a keyframe. I just hit enter twice on the keyboard. And then let's go ahead and go to, let's add 30 more frames to our timeline, so 90. And we'll say at frame 60, we're going to rotate this around. I'm going to rotate it numerically down here. Let's do 720, so it'll spin around twice. Okay, and our animation is going to go something like that. You can see the little bounding box spinning around. Okay, the reason the flag isn't spinning around is that we've already got a soft effects calculation on there. If I hit P for property, I'm actually, if this ever happens to you, you go to use a shortcut key and nothing happens. See down here, I was typing in P, I'm going to go 0, 0, and now I can hit P. I got stuck in these input fields. It does happen. I'm actually glad it happened so you can see what was going on. Okay, I'm going to turn soft effects off just for a second right here. And now when I scrub, you can see the flag going. But when there's a calculation, it overrides the motion down here. So now I'm going to calculate, and there we go. Let's take a look at what's happening here. I'm going to leave this window open just so that we can go back and take one last look at what the settings are so that they can come in handy. So As it starts, even though you can see the bounding box moving, but the wind is pulling it, okay? But once it starts to rotate, these points are within the event collision object, and if we go over to the deform tab, we have this fix by event, so the points are getting fixed into place, and as they run in there, each new row is getting fixed, which is rolling up the flag. Okay, so a really quick way of rolling it up using soft effects, using fix by event, keeping the root, and following the wind. So these are the only real settings you need in soft effects to get this kind of animation right here on the flag. Let's set up the exact same thing using cloth effects. Instead of just removing this, I'm just going to turn it off so that it no longer is active. And let's add cloth effects. Okay, double click to bring up the properties. And we're going to keep with the same animation, same setup, but there's different options that we would need to select in cloth effects. So for fix, I'm going to go ahead and prefix. Let's use the surface. We could use that fix weight map that we used, but just to do something different, I'm going to use the surface. If you look at the naming conventions here, you can see this is a vertex map weight map. That's the name, and that's the weight map. And then these are surface names. So I'm going to go ahead and choose pole. And you can see over here, they're not in red like when we use soft effects. They're selected bright yellow. Those are the points that are going to be fixed into place. I'm going to go ahead and change some of my settings. For weight, I'm going to go ahead and leave that at 1. That's fine. And of course, after we do our calculations, we can always go back and adjust these. But I am going to give it a little more spring. Let's do 1,000. Keep viscosity, resistance. For substructure, I want it to hold its shape a little bit more, so I'm going to go ahead and do 1,000 there. And for hold structure, I'm fine there. For collision, the only thing I want to do now is I don't even need to turn collision detect on. I'm going to go ahead and make this fix by event. Yeah, I'm going to say fix by event. So I'm going to activate that. And then I'm just going to change my compress stress. I'm going to lower that, and I'm going to lower the stretch limit. Okay, and that's adjusting these points right here, not the pole, because those are fixed. Those aren't going to be affected by the dynamics. So let's take a look with those settings. So compress stress 30, stretch limit 30. Collision, I've got fixed by event, which we should already know what's going to happen there based on using soft effects. And I've got the pole fixed, and I've changed the spring and the substructure. So let's go ahead and calculate that. And there we go. We get the a different look because cloth effects is going to give us a different type of look unless we really are going for the same look, and we can change the settings for that. But let's kind of scrub through that and see what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and close this window, and let's get a different view here, kind of almost a bird's eye view. Okay, so in the first 10 frames, as I kind of scrub through that, you can see the wind is pulling, and I actually like this look better than the soft effects. Not to say that we couldn't get this look in soft effects, but right off, without having to change any more settings, I can see that we're getting a little bit of pull. It's waving in the wind. Okay, and then as it spins around, these points enter into the event area, our collision object, and it locks into place. Now, this isn't a subpatch object. If this was a subdivisional surface object, we might get a smoother look. It's a pretty low-res flag here, but it should give us an idea of what would happen even if we had a higher res cage. The whole point here that I want to show is that by using fix by event, we can lock the points into place, and if we wanted a tighter roll on this, we could always adjust our settings. We could have more segments. There's a lot we could do, but hopefully this gives you an idea of using fix by event with both soft effects and cloth effects, and it's one more example of what we can do with dynamics in LightWave.